Hello guys, welcome back to my class VISTAS classes. আজি আমি তোমালোকৰ কাৰণে এটা ইম্পৰ্টেন্ট টপিক ডিসকাস কৰিবলৈ লৈছো, আলোচনা কৰিবলৈ লৈছো। এটো হল তোমালোকৰ ক্লাস 12 ৰ সাপ্লিমেন্টাৰী ৰিডাৰ যিখন আছে ভিস্টাছৰ এখন সৰু নাটক। The name of the play is On the Face of It, written by Susan Hill. It's a very small play. It has only 3 scenes, and the play features an old man, Mr. Lamb, and a little boy, Derek or Derry. The little boy was defiant and withdrawn, and Mr. Lamb tries to strike a friendship with the little boy. Now we'll read some of the lines of the book and then try to sum up the whole play. There are 2 main characters. First one is Mr. Lamb and the second one is the little boy Derry. Both are what is called differently able. Mr. Lamb has got a thin leg and Derry, the little boy, he has got one side of his face burned by acid. So they are some sort of marginalized people, or the society usually marginalize them. So here the theme is how should we treat those people with some physical deformity, or physical disability. They are not mentally disabled. In fact, they are differently able. Now we'll try to sum up the whole play and also read some important lines from the play. Just listen to me. The first scene begins in Mr. Lamb's garden. Mr. Lamb lives all alone in the garden. Although there is a big house inside the garden, he lives all alone, and the gates of the garden are always open. That means all are welcome. The summary of the story, to begin with, the summary of the story or the summary of the play to begin with, the story begins with a teenage boy entering the garden of Mr. Lamb. He doesn't enter the garden through the gates, but he climbed up the wall, then he entered the garden. His face is burnt on one side due to an accident when acid fell on half of his face. He has gone there to hide himself as he is afraid of facing people. Little Derry thought that this is an empty place. There was no one inside. So he liked the place. He wanted to enter the garden, Mr. Lamb's garden, because he always avoids people. He suffers from some sort of complexes, some sort of inferiority complex. He is hiding himself from people. He doesn't want to come face to face. He fears that he will be teased by others for having such a burnt face. But when he enters the garden, he finds someone already present there. He tries to leave the place, but he is stopped by the old man, Mr. Lamb, the owner of the garden. There he feels guilty for entering the garden without permission. But Mr. Lamb welcomes him and tells him not to leave just because of his presence. There he wants to live as he thinks people don't like his face. And moreover, they get scared of his looks. But Mr. Lamb insists him to stay there. They enter into a lively conversation. That how Derry is not liked by anyone and how he hates people behaving like this with him. Mr. Lamb tries to persuade him, tries to console him, tries to see the reason behind all this inexplicable behavior of the people. He tells him that he has got a thin leg and kids make fun of him. They call him Lammy Lamb. Still he is not depressed and enjoys his life. He loves to read books and loves to enjoy the different beautiful scenes of nature. He loves to pluck the flowers and also collect honeybees and also the fruits. Pick up the fruits and make jelly and toffees for small kids who are the visitors, who are the regular visitors to his garden. They would talk about various things, and this leads to revelation of there is fear, depression and hatred about his being in such a condition. But Mr. Lamb keeps on telling him to think of the positive things. Soon they become friends. And what Mr. Lamb was trying to do, he was successful in making friends with little Derry. Mr. Lamb tells him to take permission from his mother. Derry finds it difficult, and this leads to a small quarrel between both of them. At last Derry tells him that he would come back after taking his mother's permission. His mother doesn't want him to go back, but he comes back again to fulfill his promise. Meanwhile, Mr. Lamb climbs the ladder on his own to pluck the crab apples, as he was sure that Derry wouldn't return. He was disabled and it was very difficult for him to climb. Mr. Lamb falls from his ladder and dies. Derry, on the other hand, returns to the garden to help him. When he enters the garden, he sees Mr. Lamb lying on the ground. Derry tries hard to make him move, but did not get any response from him. Finally, the little boy comes to know that he is dead and starts crying. This is in brief the whole story of the play. And Mr. Lamb warns him about when Derry enters Mr. Lamb's garden, still tilling, by climbing up the wall. He warns him about the crab apples that usually fell in the long grass from the tree above. There he was shocked on hearing a voice. He asked as to who it was. Mr. Lamb introduced himself and also said that the small sour apples known as crab apples had fallen on the ground. If Derry would not be careful while walking through the grass, he could trip over them and get hurt. Derry said that he didn't know that someone was present in the garden. He thought it to be empty, and even the house seemed empty to him. Mr. Lamb tried to comfort him by saying that the house was empty as he was out in the garden. He also asked him not to be afraid. Derry wanted to leave the place. Mr. Lamb tried and to stop him and said that there was no need to leave the garden just because of him. He also told him that he kept the gate open for people. It was only Derry who jumped up the wall. Derry got angry. Derry got angry when for being watched by Mr. Lamb climbing the wall. So, yeah, and he clarified that he hadn't come to steal anything from the garden. He just liked the place, so entered it by climbing the wall. He is defiant. The little boy was defiant and withdrawn. He doesn't usually like people. He doesn't want to be friends with people. Mr. Lamb told him not to be afraid of him and asked him to stay there for a while. Then he told him that he was not afraid of anyone, rather people were afraid of him. Lamb asked him the reason for that. He told him that he knew what people thought and how they behaved in front of him. Mr. Lamb questioned him about what others thought of him. Then he said that people got scared on seeing his face. Some considered it bad or ugly, while some even took pity on him by saying that he was a poor boy. He added that they were fake. Actually, they all were afraid of his face. He himself even got scared of his own face when he looked into the mirror. So, Mr. Lamb said that he wasn't afraid of Derry. Mr. Lamb answered that he wasn't afraid of Derry. Derry was shocked to hear that. Then Mr. Lamb told him that he would bring a ladder and stick and pick fine and ripe crab apples as they are very good for making jelly. He also told him that in September they get ripened, and he also told about the magic fruit that is orange, which are golden in color. And Derry asked him why he changed the topic why he was trying to change the topic just like other people did. He added that Mr. Lamb didn't ask him about his face because he was also afraid of him. He was also afraid of asking about it. Derry got annoyed and said that he didn't like the company of people. Mr. Lamb guessed that maybe maybe his face got burnt in some fire. They told him that it was due to acid that had burned half of his face. He was so grieved, so sad, that he kept on repeating that acid ate his face and that it would never get cured and he would never be fine again. And next, Mr. Lamb did not agree with him. Mr. Lamb did not agree with him. That he thought that he was not interested in his story. They thought that he was not interested in his story. To this, Mr. Lamb said that he was interested in each and every creation of God. He pointed out at a wall and asked him what did he see beyond it. Then he replied that there were weeds or unwanted plants. Mr. Lamb explained that there were a number of plants in his garden. There were flowers, trees, herbs, and some plants were considered good and some were called weed. Some were called weed and unwanted plants. It was not because they were different. All of them were green in color. All of them were green. But still, people call them, some of the plants they call herbs, plants, and some of them they call weeds. They are unwanted. In reality, they were all same, just like Deri and himself. Deri did not agree to this. Mr. Lamb told him that there was no difference. He was young and Mr. Lamb was old. That's the difference. And Deri has got a burnt face and he has got a tin leg. And then Deri asked him how he lost his leg, how he had to wear a tin leg. He then told him that it got damaged in a bomb explosion many years ago. Kids teased him by calling him Lammy Lamb. Deri then said that he could easily cover his legs wearing a trouser so that no one could see it. And Deri showed his face in reply to Lamb's statement. Mr. Lamb suggested that things like crab apples, weeds, spiders, and the tall sunflowers could also be some of the other things that people will probably look at and discuss, than merely looking at his burnt face. So, these are some of the conversation between them. And Deri kept on talking about his depression, about his frustration, about his observation of people, how they react, how they would react when they saw him, how they would behave, with him, how they would treat him. So it was cruel. He thought that it was cruel. He thought that it was unjustified. Deri thought that he would never look different. When he will be as old as Mr. Lamb, then also he would have only half a face. Mr. Lamb Mr. Lamb agreed. Mr. Lamb said that yes, that he would always have a half a face. But the world was full. And there were so many things. There were so many things to look at. There were so many things to look at. And he is no different from other normal, as he call other normal people. And because he has got 2 hands, 2 eyes, 2 legs, 1 tongue, 1 nose, everything. If he wants to be like others, he can be. Yeah. And he can be better than them if he keeps his mind consistent. So this is how the Mr. Lamb is trying to strike a relationship between them with the little boy Derry. He is trying to instill confidence and belief into the young boy, into the small boy, and somewhat he was successful, because in spite of all this, in spite of his many complexes, in spite of his inferiority complex, the little boy Derry feels that Mr. Lamb was peculiar. Mr. Lamb says peculiar things. He was somewhat particular, not like others. He asked questions which were peculiar. So he, without his knowing, he got attracted to Mr. Lamb. He feels like coming back. He feels like coming. He feels like coming back because when Mr. Lamb was trying to extract the different qualities, different feelings and emotions from the little boy, and he was successful in doing so. So this is the thing. This is all about the play. This is all about the play, and here both Derry and Mr. Lamb are disabled, or in today's parlance, differently able. Derry has got a burnt face and Mr. Lamb has a thin leg. Mr. Lamb has a... we'll now discuss, this is all about the story of Mr. Lamb and Derry. We'll try to discuss 2 or 3 questions here. We'll try to discuss some of the questions. First question is, what is that draws Derry towards Mr. Lamb in spite of himself? Answer would be, both Derry and Mr. Lamb are disabled, or what we should call differently able. Derry has got a burnt face and Mr. Lamb has got a thin leg. Derry is depressed because of his ugly face. People don't like him or are afraid of him. His parents also think that he will not be able to do anything after their death in this world. He will be all alone. Such things have made him so sad and depressed that he has started to hate people. Mr. Lamb discovers this about him while talking to him. He encourages him to lead a normal life and suggests him to watch and listen to everything in order to enjoy life. He gives him his own example that kids tease him for his thin leg, but he doesn't care about this. Kids tease him by calling him Lammy Lamb. Such positive things, such peculiar things draw Derry towards Mr. Lamb in spite of himself, in spite of his being such a defiant and withdrawn boy, in spite of his having suffered from a series of depression and frustration, also some complexes. And second question, in which section of the play does Mr. Lamb display signs of loneliness and disappointment? What are the ways in which Mr. Lamb tries to overcome these feelings? In the middle part of the first scene, we observe that Mr. Lamb is lonely. He tells Derry that when it is a bit cooler, he will get the ladder and a stick and pull down those crab apples. He makes jelly with them. Derry could help him. He also tells him that he is interested in anybody or anything that God has created. It may be a person, flower, fruit, grass, weeds, or rubbish. He also tells him that he sits in the sun and reads books, and that he does not use curtains in his house because he wants to enjoy both light and darkness. These all are the signs of his loneliness and also his way of overcoming it. The third one is the actual pain. The actual pain or inconvenience caused by a physical impairment is often much less than the sense of alienation felt by the person with disabilities. What is the kind of behavior that the person expects from others? This play reveals the bitter truth of a life led by a disabled or differently able person. They not only suffer physical pain but also suffer emotionally due to the absurd, indifferent behavior, odd behavior of the people, cruel behavior of the people. They are teased and disliked by others. They are treated cruelly by others. People make unkind remarks about them. Derry has got a burnt face and people don't like him for being ugly. Some get afraid of him, which doesn't allow him to stay with them. On the other hand, Mr. Lamb has got thin leg and is teased by kids as Lemmy Lamb. He lives alone in his big house and has no one in his life to look after him. Such instances show that the sense of alienation that these people feel causes them constant pain. Such persons expect cooperation, not pity from others. They do not want sympathy or pity, but just a reasonable behavior. Just like they want to live just like normal people. And they want to get that kind of treatment which usually normal people get from their counterparts. So this is all about the play. We'll end up our discussion here because video would be very long. So next time, see you then. Goodbye. Thank you very much.